NFL Power Rankings heading into week number 7. These ones, a couple of big movers, but a lot kind of stays the same. As this NFL week almost felt like the first week where things started to make sense a little bit, right? Like it was just okay. There wasn't a wild and crazy, oh wow, how did this happen? What an upset, what a like for the first 6 weeks of the season, the whole year has kind of felt like the red zone witching hour thing. But now it's kind of settled in a little bit more. So at 32, it's Carolina. We continue to see that while it was fun when they played Cincinnati and the Raiders and everything was moving well, now that they're facing real football teams, there's resistance and they are not handling it super well. So there's that. At 31, it's New England. Yes, Drake May came in and played quarterback. No, it didn't look good for a half. Yes, it looked better in the second half. No, it does not make them a good football team. At 30, it's the Cleveland Browns. They move on from Amari Cooper, and the race to the bottom is on. And for these three teams, we'll talk about this in a sec. At 29, it's the Vegas Raiders. They move on from Devontae Adams, and the race for the bottom is on. At 28, it is the Miami Dolphins. They did not play this week, and so they moved up a spot because things got substantially worse for the Raiders. And so our bottom 5, Miami, Vegas, Cleveland, New England, and Carolina. Not necessarily how the standings sit right now, but let's just say, for argument's sake, that this is the draft order when we get to April. That's a lot of interesting decisions to be made. For Carolina, is it quarterback again? Because that feels like a waste. That feels like a gigantic... Now, there's the sunk cost and all of that, but oh boy, I think that if you're Carolina right now and you do get that first overall pick, I think you have to try to take advantage and hope that there is another, quite frankly, Carolina out there who is desperate to move up and try to get a Ewers or or whoever is going to be the number one quarterback. Hope that they are desperate enough, because this team, when they went out and made that move for Bryce Young, they were not a quarterback away. And now here we are a couple of years later, and you are still not a quarterback away. And so I think if the Panthers went out and drafted a kid again, first overall, they would just be making the exact same mistake that they did, and clearly not doing anything to grow from that. New England would obviously not be taking a quarterback. That would be best O-lineman or wide receiver available. The Cleveland one's interesting because a lot of people are saying that the only way you get rid of Deshaun Watson is to attach your first round pick to it. If the first round pick is top 3, do they? Or do they just kind of like, hey, Deshaun, we're going to pay you to not be here, and we're going to draft this kid, and they're going to be the starter. You will collect your paycheck and just sit at home and stay so far away from this kid. It's not even funny. I wonder what they would do there. The Raiders, I think, would just draft a quarterback and move on, even though, again, I don't think that foundation is set. And the Miami one is really interesting because of the Tua situation. And Walt Grizzly in the chat, why do you think the Dolphins are worse than the Jags or the Titans right now? Interesting question. The Titans did beat Miami a couple of weeks ago, and Jacksonville, yes, and I probably didn't move Jacksonville down far enough in my rankings, so a very good point. It's how bad it has looked, and a big part of that is Tua not being in the lineup, but let's remember, it didn't look good for Tua in week 1. They do get the win against Jacksonville, and so yes, my argument of, well, Tennessee beat them, goes out the window because Jacksonville won, but don't only pay attention to the stuff I want you to. But no, and then week 2, they are getting just curb stomped by Buffalo, and then the Tua injury happens, and now, like, this offense can do nothing. Like, they look like the worst offense in football, and there are still a lot of talented pieces on this team, but quite frankly, I think that teams like the Raiders in New England have more of a beef with being below Miami than Miami has of being below a Tennessee or a Jacksonville, just based off of how it looks. Now, if we were to project, like, there's still a world Miami makes the playoffs. Tua comes back, and we have the same conversation we've had for a bit where, oh, well, he's one big hit away, and then I counter with, well, yeah, so is fucking everybody. And then we see what happens on that Thursday night game. It's like, well, maybe he's just a medium hit away. And there is all of that conversation, but for right now, it has just looked so bad. And this defense has not recovered in the way that I think a few people assumed it would. And now part of that is they're on the field all the time because, again, the offense can do nothing. But I just think this offense is not moving the football at all, and it has made for a really bad product. At 27, it's the Tennessee Titans. I still think this is a decent roster, just a quarterback who continues to make mistake after mistake. And this last week was, I think, the kind of the nail in all of it. That this just, I don't think it's going to work. And I don't like writing a kid off in his first full year of starting, but we have talked time and time again, the Indianapolis Colts do not alter their defense at all. And so for Will Levis to be thrown off by that is, I think, very concerning going forward for this team. At 26, it's the Rams. Maybe they get a little bit healthier and move on up, but it has been a bit of a slog so far this year. At 25, the Denver Broncos, they made a bit of a comeback against the LA Chargers, but the first 3 quarters of that game did not look very good for them. At 24, it's Jacksonville. Again, probably should be a little bit lower on this list. I think part of it is just I have them a little high to begin with, and so they are moving down incrementally a little bit. But yeah, if I just was starting brand new over, maybe I shouldn't have them this high, but it is also tough to, like, I guess Denver does have 3 wins, but I have not been impressed by Denver at all. And I still think I would take Jacksonville's roster right now and just kind of go with them. So that's where I'm at. At 23, it's the Giants. The defense is legitimately better than I thought it was going to be. And now the offense is not. But with Neighbors there's at least something. I think they found something in Tracy. I'll be interested to see what they do with him when Singletary is back, but I think this defense is actually legitimately pretty good. At 22, it's the Bears. The offense is starting to figure it out a little bit more, and this defense is very, very good. And so they're starting to put together a pretty good football team. At 21, it's the Indianapolis Colts. They have this weird thing where even when they win, none of it looks impressive. It all looks like a grind. It all looks really just like, well, I guess we found a way to win. Like, it never feels like they fully win a game. It's just that their opponents kind of run out of time. And that's not a great way to be building things. But I have them close to the middle. At 20, it's a big fall for the Dallas Cowboys. We have enough evidence now that I think we can clearly say on this podcast on Wednesday, October 16th at 10:29 a.m. Mountain Time, the Dallas Cowboys are a bad football team. This is just a horrendous group that cannot defend, nor can they move the football. Also, the coach is dumb. Also, the owner is kind of insane. There are no redeeming qualities of this football team. They have CeeDee Lamb. That's it. Dak Prescott seems like he kind of be a good, fun dude to hang out with, but I don't think I'd want to be paying him a lot of money to be the quarterback of my football team. It's just that there's not a whole lot going on in Dallas right now. At 19, I have the Cincinnati Bengals. It's getting a little bit better, but again, the offense, it's weird. Like, I can't say, well, the offense can't really do anything, but also the Giants' defense is legitimate. Trust that. But I do think that the offense is kind of rounding out a little bit, and I think more Chase Brown would certainly answer a lot of things that this team needs. And defensively, it looked good against the Giants, but again, it's the Giants, so I don't think we can take that all that seriously. So I think that this is a Cincinnati team that is good, not great, and will probably continue to rise up a little bit. At 18, it's Arizona. They are another one that dropped quite a bit. I believe I had them around top 10 last week. I just can't. The offense is now too inconsistent, and the defense is now too bad. It's not clicking and it's not progressing. We saw this at the early part of the season, like, okay, this is meshing, it's going well, it hasn't taken that next step yet, and that has been, I think, a real concern for the Arizona Cardinals, is how inconsistent it seems right now. Toxic in the chat. The Cowboys being bad is good for the NFL. Oh boy, is it. I do, like, it is a little bit more fun when the Cowboys are good. They are one of those teams where even if they aren't good, we're still going to have to deal with them a lot, you know? And so because they're going to be on prime time 5 or 6 times a year, and we're always going to get them on the Thanksgiving Day game, and we're always going to be talking about them, like, I mean, and look, I'm guilty of it too. Guess who's going to be the thumbnail this week for this. It's going to be Dak Prescott and Cowboys plummet in power rankings, because people pay attention to them. And because we get them, like, just kind of plungered down our throats, I would kind of just rather them be good. If I'm going to have to watch them anyway, I would rather they be good. So not great to the point where it's absurd, but give me a good football team. But to your point, Toxic, every now and then when they just slip in a nice little oh wow, they're 6-11 type of a season, that makes it fun. And then it also makes draft time fun because you have this marquee franchise and now everyone's focusing on draft stuff. So, yes, the Cowboys being bad is very good for NFL fans and very much enjoyable. At 17, it is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They put up a whole lot of points against the New Orleans Saints and also gave up a whole bunch of points to Spencer Rattler. Although some of that was the pick sixes and fumbles and all that stuff. But this is where they should be. I have been caught in thinking too highly of Tampa Bay, and also I have at times been caught thinking too lowly of Tampa Bay. But we are now, I think, course corrected and figured out what this team actually is. At 16, it is the Los Angeles Chargers. Again, offense mid, defense is quite good, but not to the point that it carries them up to being anything beyond a middle tier team. At 15, it is New Orleans, probably a little bit too high, but still up there a little bit based off of how well things went at the beginning part of the season. And again, I have incredible respect for what they can do on the defensive side of the football. Really interested in the Thursday night game. Against the Denver Broncos. At 14, it's Seattle. Again, maybe a little bit too high, but again, this is one of those things where, okay, well, I think Seattle's too high. Well, can I confidently put New Orleans ahead of them? No. Chargers? No. Bucks? No. Cards? No. Bengals? No. Cowboys? LOL. All of these teams, 14, when you watch Seattle play, it's well, that is not the 14th best team in the NFL. And then you watch the 18 behind them, or 17 behind them, it's well, I mean, maybe. There's a lot of mediocre, as we've discussed, and Seattle, I think, is a step above that. They need to get healthy on defense because it's starting to become really very much a problem for Seattle. At 13, it is Pittsburgh. Some talk that Russell Wilson could get the start this week at quarterback. That is a good way to fall down in the power rankings, but that defense continues to be a problem. At 12, it's the New York Jets. They lose but move up because they end up getting Devontae Adams, and we broke the trade down yesterday. Maybe not necessarily the biggest need that this team has right now, but it is certainly a team that I think could be, or it's certainly a move that I think could help this team out a little bit further on. And it definitely puts them ahead of Pittsburgh, Seattle, New Orleans, LA for now, even though they sit at 2 and 4. Coming in at, where are we? Number 11. It is the Philadelphia Eagles. They are not impressive at all. And I wanted to believe, I wanted to buy in. And we said going into last week, this was the week where it needed to be dominant. And so many times when we have that, it just doesn't get there. And this week, it just didn't get there. And so I am done taking Philadelphia seriously as any kind of a threat, which is not great when we have a ticket that says Philadelphia Eagles, number 1 seed in the NFC. Doesn't feel good. I mean, got the win, so that's great, but it hasn't looked like it at all. At 10, it is San Francisco getting back on track with a Thursday night win over Seattle. They are getting healthier. They are getting better, even though I guess they're not getting all that much healthier with Mason getting hurt, but we'll see what his status is this week. At 9, it's Atlanta. It's becoming very apparent that what we saw week 1 for Atlanta against Pittsburgh was just working out some kinks, given that they didn't use a whole lot in the preseason, and we're starting to see, as the weeks go on, a little bit more creativity in the offensive play calling, better execution in the offensive play calling, and the defense is pretty good as well. At 8, it's Washington. They do take a bit of a dip after a loss against the Baltimore Ravens, but they hung with Baltimore, sorry. And so I think they are still deserving of a top 10 spot. At 7, it's Green Bay. This was the most convincing victory and performance that Green Bay has had all season against Arizona, so that is a good sign again for us. We were kind of on the Green Bay bandwagon. They are getting better as the season goes on, and it's kind of similar to last year. Only this year they're not starting at 3-6 and making that push. They're starting right around 500 and making a push. So I think they're going to be dangerous. Walt saying that Mason is practicing. He should be able to play against Kansas City on Sunday. That's fantastic news, especially for those of us who have Mason in fantasy leagues. At where do we go? At 6, it's Buffalo. They move up in the power rankings, getting Amari Cooper and getting a big win over the New York Jets. I think Amari Cooper is exactly what this offense needed, and I think gets them back into kind of Super Bowl contention. Now, as we talked about yesterday, defense still needs to be addressed, but it's looking up with Amari Cooper there. At 5, it is the Houston Texans, 41 points over the New England Patriots. Another strong showing against a defense that we think is supposed to be pretty good, although I think that is also changing a fair amount. At 4, it's Detroit. The Lions, boy, did they feel a certain kind of way about playing the Dallas Cowboys last week. Hey, like that was a loss that really stuck with that team, and they pounded the hell out of them in this game, and just any nightmares they had from a season ago have all gone away based off of that one, because holy crap. And then our top 3 remain the same. At 3, it is the Minnesota Vikings, who it's still Sam Darnold, so we still can't get him in that top 2 yet, but they find their way on the podium. At 2, it is the Baltimore Ravens. Still some long-term concerns about that defense, but that was a good win against Washington. And at number 1, no one has knocked them off the perch yet. They are the Kansas City Chiefs. So those are the NFL power rankings as we head into week number 7.